Good evening, everyone. I'm Lucy Handley from the Ridgefield Library, and I'm going to introduce our Poet Laureate Emerita, Barb Jennis, who's done so much for the town and for poetry in general. Thank you, Barb. Welcome.
I've done so much damage, is what you're saying. Hi,
No damage.
I'm so glad everyone's with us this evening, especially, with the holiday season upon us. Everybody gets a little busy, so this is a really wonderful break to take, and we're glad you're here. Thank you, Lucy Handley. Thank you, Ridgefield Library, for hosting us. It's been a really wonderful venue for all sorts of poetry events, and I'm sure your local libraries are much the same. We're going to start off this evening with Karen Silk, who is author of Somewhere. Oh, I wanted to say, I read very short biographies for each of the poets, but then if you'd like to find out more information or the names of their publications or what journals they're recently published in, just check in the chat. I will put each poet's longer biography there. So we'll start with Karen Silk. Karen is the author of Somewhere, a Bird, and the Poet Laureate of Washington, Connecticut. A lifelong peace advocate and environmentalist, Karen has been a psychotherapist, a teacher, and a businesswoman. So please welcome Karen Silk.
Thank you, Barb. Oh, you are a star. I aspire to be just like you, and I feel like you are the best role model any poet laureate could have. So thank you so much for doing this. I feel so honored to have been invited. So a little story. We have a magazine in our part of the world called the Litchfield magazine, which highlights sort of the Northwest quadrant. And Mary Beth Lawler is the editor. And I was at a gathering with her, and I said to her, would you consider soliciting poetry for the magazine? I would be really happy to, look at it and with you perhaps select some appropriate writings. And she said, no, I don't think I want to do that. But she said, why don't you send me a few of your poems? Well, of course, what an offer. So over the years, I have had the privilege of being published in the Litchfield magazine. And I have never written on demand, but she often has an idea of what she wants for the magazine. And by golly, I thought, I can do this. And one of the funniest was when she wrote and said, I would like 150 words about summer. Do you think you can do that? And I thought, hell yeah, I can do that. And so it's been kind of fun to accede to her request for the magazine. And the latest was for something having to do with the December issue, which is Holiday in the Hills. And that was a little tricky because, December, the holidays are celebrated in many different ways by many different people. And I really struggled, and I thought, I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to do this. And then I just thought, come on, I can do this. And so what I wrote was something called December Haiku. Darkness descends early, a foreshortening of days, the delinquent sun. Bleak bones of trees hold up the gray shrouded sky, an unfinished storm. Snow falls as sugar, a sweetness and a stillness. Ice snaps and shines. Bells peal, voices sing, exclaiming wild, perfect love. The heart cries joy. A time of festivals, music, ornaments, angels, pale gold and silver. Gathering family to wear the cloak of mercy, our deepest yearning. Peace, peace, we pray peace. We must bear the weight of it, the light of the world. This was a poem that I wrote about 10 years ago. It was the morning of my birthday, high summer, and the sky was blue and I was alive. And I just had to say this. Was there ever a birthday so perfect, so dazzled by sunlight, that it created in you the desire to raise every window, fling open the door, turn on the music and dance barefoot on the cool stone floor? When the garden was so exuberantly bursting that all you could do was race outside, put your face into a blossom and sing. I'm a great fan of E.M. Forster. He's one of my most favorite writers. And I have to say, Howard's End is one of my most favorite books. And so this is a poem entitled What Forster Wrote. It's before breakfast. You are reading Howard's End aloud, the description of the garden's tangle. I stare out the window above the sink. A slinky crow hops across the grass. I barely listen as I wonder about crows, how their intelligent, ambitious hearts get them into paintings, novels, and poems. Even the garden at Howard's End, calling from the gatepost to other crows close by in fields. Words warm the cool kitchen, mix with the perk and aroma of coffee, the low bubble of oats popping in the pan, the bright scent of peeled oranges. I feel the pages flutter where this morning sadness gathers, actually rushes in. Then I think of Helen when she saw the freshly cut hayfield, the abundant rose, the fragrance. Where I lived in Indiana, I grew up in a house that had a great big sun porch that had been built for a young boy who was dying of tuberculosis. Sanctuary. I sit in the room above the garage, entered from the back stair landing, windows ganged on three sides, and wonder about the boy, how he spent his time here, confined to bed, unable to run in wet grass, climb the oak shading the house. Did he wonder when, if, or ever he would be the boy I see in this picture, found in a book left behind? Loops of dark hair, crinkly face eyeing the sun, bat on his shoulder, right hand in a glove. The lung shadow hidden. Did he ring a brass bell when he wanted stories or soup? Did laughter sound as freedom from next door, home to the Crawford girls, or the swoosh of the ball through the hoop in the driveway where his brother practiced shots, or shouts from the schoolyard each September when leaves curled and turned red? From this high perch, did he watch snow silently fall, gather in the arms of the trees as his mother gathered him, held him close when his chest could not breathe? Was the cupboard filled with chess, checkers, and cards played on a night like this when the moon lights the sky, the whole room to silver? Still life. She curls into the chair, leans her cheek against the cold glass, the rain's tympany mixed with shards of sleet. She is still, before the fire in the room. It is now that the mist clears, revealing trees against wildly shooting stars. Her skin remembers every touch, the celadon bowl of plums, the fruit he placed in her hands. The scarlet bird. Words tumble from my heart, forging a new landscape, verdant and lush, where even gnarled lilacs bloom. This is my life. I want it delectable as a Cezanne painting, the fruit on the green plate, luminous in the afternoon sun, or as astonishing as the sea each morning in the red-eye dawn. I want my words to matter, to give meaning to the scarlet bird perched on the gray branch above the garden. When you touch my hand, feel my skin's breath, its honest warmth. Okay, now, so I like all of you, I've given lots of readings, and I don't know quite how I got into it, but I did. And that was at the end of every reading, I always read the last poem in my book. And tonight it will be no different. I don't know if any of the others do this, and I don't know quite how I got into it, but it's kind of a way of closure. So you know the end is coming. And now this morning, this is our world, as exotic and graceful as the dragonfly who lives with dignity, completely itself. And now this morning, geese press south, giving voice to their journey. They are never finished. May that be our fate, all of us never finished. Another season of Thanksgiving, the hills above the lake, dazzling as heaven. I admire each dawn, high noon and sunset above these waters as our ancestors did, keeping faith with the evening star and every bird and all the grasses and every fish and every shining tree. Thank you.
Wonderful, Karen. That was lovely. And I remember you always reading that poem last, and I love that poem every time I hear it. Just gorgeous. All of us never finishing. What a great idea. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, I think that's what we have to catch on to, actually, to believe that we're never finished. There's always a next chapter.
That's right. That's right. And even if we're not here to see it, we're remembered, right? So
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Barb, for inviting me. I feel so honored.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. All right, next we have Tim Duffy. Tim holds a PhD in Renaissance literature. Good for you, Tim. From the University of Virginia. He has taught at the School of the Holy Child in Rye, New York, the University of New Hampshire, and at New York University. So check the chat for Tim's full bio, and please welcome Tim.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you so much, Barb, for organizing this. I feel like every fun poetry thing I do in Connecticut is because of you, so I'm very grateful. This first poem is called Red. It was published a few issues ago in Salt Hill Journal, and I was writing with a writing group at that point, and they encouraged us to write a poem about family trauma and sort of difficult family memories. And people were writing, I mean, really sort of heart-wrenching, beautiful poetry. And I think always the Boston Irish Catholic, I went at it in a sort of sideways way. And I was with high school friends of mine up in the Berkshires, and the first line came to me, which is, "My family has a secret, we turn into lobsters." And that's the first line of this poem called Red. My family has a secret. We turn into lobsters, the sea green hard shell variety that hides in the corners of the ocean, growing heavy with meat. Giant, behemoth lobsters, sedentary and lonely. It's not a big deal, my father told me, when I turned 11 and my tail flipped over the breakfast table. Our kind, we sit and eat while the world swims by. But at night, I turned on love songs as my shell came in, took pride in the bony swimmerets that sexed me male, and wondered how I could love myself with eyes so set into my rostrum, the antennae probing out of my hiding spot. This is a body for shame, I thought, the family tradition. But I danced, spreading crusher and pincher wide open, Europod swaying to the trumpet and piano. I wondered, how can something so unloved be so desired? I grew large with sea trash, and my eyes clouded a deep black. One night, hanging out by candlelit windows, I saw a way in. They eat you, you moron. But look, there we were, beautiful, centered, red as hell next to champagne flutes, the absurd bib with our likeness on it. I grew envious of the sturgeon, sliced open, its eggs salted for those grand tables. I believe somewhere even dead sea creatures can hear the champagne corks pop, and that might just be enough to die desired. One night in the hot tub with friends, I felt the transformation coming. Marky pulled at my swim trunks to see the hard red shell. Don't start anything you can't finish, I joked. But when he brought butter and those slim forks, I felt betrayed. Salt other tears gathered in my eye pits. At night, down below, all of us facing the same direction, the same silent ocean swirl. This was the lesson. To be loved, you get the pot or the clam bake, the trap or the garbage. They do not love you out there, though they collect you, devour you. But I grew another way. When my shell was cramped, I molted in broad daylight, a soft shell rebel. Devour me what can, I dance with bare-chested mermaids who whisper mockingly, but love my soft flesh rippling in the waves. They throw me around like the hearts of doomed sailors, but I do not die. When they bring me their shipwrecks, they exclaim, look at all this garbage. How can you not be beautiful among it? I've started writing a lot of poems about kind of family history, and especially about two really beloved aunts who both were with us a year ago at this time and have passed away in the past 12 months. And so I've been thinking a lot about them. This poem is called The Nun in September. She prays to a god, a window that can be shattered, the flesh which takes the sewing kit needle just before the tears come. Every nun is a woman in love or in flight, she thinks, as she looks around in her room at the ungraded papers, the index card, Mom's tuna casserole in light pencil. The community meal she starts to make, though she cannot cook, cannot pray, and suspects more and more that she cannot teach. The students sigh and shuffle papers, giggle one by one until the swarmed rebellion sends her crying to the principal. No one knows failure like a teacher. No one knows the silence around prayer like a sister religious unpacking the dowry check, the acceptable under things, the journal of mental health and reflection. Her dream of God is a locked door, an open prairie, but instead only these asshole kids and the nun who spread ketchup on her mother's tuna casserole and eat in silence. She wants to leave them and read, to sit in the contemplation of the Lord who led her out of one trauma into another, who spoke French to her in the tongue of bitch nuns who resent her drinking Coke in the morning or criticizing Richard Nixon. Whatever is next, she thinks, it will be a small room with a lock on the door, and alas, she is all too right. Soon she will be begging cigarettes from nurses who know she doesn't smoke, but want so desperately to start. She will try to shatter all the doors, but no, no, they will say, you must stay a bit. Get used to hearing no. Picture the lock on the door. Learn to pray. Hear its click and be grateful. Show us what's in your pockets. Send a brochure to your father and wait. When the Lord's house burns down, it is both a tragedy and an opening. Look at that road just outside. Run, but not yet. This is a poem called Cleaning Out the House. The stairs and the storm door and the porch and the door, the fridge and the faucet and the untouched china, the piles of boxes, the books, the COVID test, the diary shoved between box store books, your body found by the police, your checkbook buried under old prayer manuals, the bird in the attic left dead and desiccated between boxes and your father's journals. I picture myself on the porch, still the young, oversized nephew, clutching books in hands still sticky from the candy dish. The porch is a stage of desire, and I am the Greek actor turning master cry out the dissolution of the family. Instead, I'm the laborer, the scholar critic, left with your last text, the map that draws the lands between diapers and the grave, the nun's habit and the sweater and rosary for the casket. When I wrote your eulogy, your obituary, your prayer card, I was the bearded evangelist of your death. I put endings and form to the bric-a-brac hoarder's mansion in which you lived. Each of your diaries under trash or tissues, old sweaters or discount romance novels, glowed to my eyes through the dust. I am the grave robber, the colonial Egyptologist whose lungs can take the risk. I open a window, turn to a page. How your cursive widened with age, the piles of books and trash, and the unwalkable labyrinth from chair to bed made the police suspect the worst. Your diary settled the matter. On the last page you wrote, "Please, Lord, let me feel better." Every final prayer must be unanswered. I know so many who would toss the journals unread, ignore the transcripts of hospital confessions, aborted treatments, but the door was unlocked and the dust and forgotten treasures moldered like a pharaoh's tomb. The house is sold. The dumpster was delivered immediately. But now, like an apostle, I run from your corpse with a version of your story and the promise to write. I catalog the volumes in a library built to flee. They are not all read. Each one unlocks some booby-trapped chamber in a kid's imagination. Why did we idolize explorers? Who am I to tell this story? This is a bit of a lighter one. It's called The Bower of Bliss. It's based on book 2 of Spenser's Fairy Queen, where the Knight of Temperance, Guion, encounters some very scantily clad women in a fountain who are meant to tempt him. And I sort of shifted it to a bit more of a contemporary setting. This is The Bower of Bliss. In the parking lot, the men walk bow-legged, like cowboys after the last cattle thief has been shot. In the town, the mines have already collapsed, and they drive from shuttered windows to orange signs. A cigar in the mouth casting shadows on the too bright shirt, the sidewalk, the worn jeans stretched with a faint pile of cash. When we approached, we were told it was our destiny to destroy the last great citadel of desire. Secretly, we hoped to be turned traitors to temperance, and so entered with money, hats, low voices amid the cries. This is a training ground where bodies learn to move in new ways. We are still. Next to us, a pile of money rubs against round flesh. When you were a boy, they told you never to come here. And so now it is all you have dreamed of, the fountain of desire, the women topless in the flow of water. When we walk among our people, look at them face to face and let your garments fall loose. When we walked under the gates to this place, it warned us that intemperance would destroy us completely. But one bowl pours so easily into another. The fountains taught me that. So we connect, one garden to the other, like lost flies to a neon sign saying open. This one, I had a great aunt. She just passed away recently, and she was just incredibly classy. So all the poems I write about her have very classy titles. When I knew that she was, I was going to see her for the last time, she had terminal cancer, I brought her these very complicated pastries I had made called cannelé de Bordeaux. And I knew that she would appreciate how complicated they were to make. So this poem is called Cannelé de Bordeaux. The offering is well rested. Giver and receiver take turns at the switchboard. An angel above fingers the delicate threads, ponders which are the easiest, which hold the light of the blade the cleanest. The points of fatigue, the harbingers of failure. The gift below has taken all night, invigilating the end. Time darkens the edges, gives the whole thing resolve. I wait at the oven as if in front of a grand decider. When is it done? When do we become the temperature of soil? The vapor that leaks from the oven through the cracks in the house's seal like a prayer or a stubborn fragment, it cries out, something is still here. Taste me while there is still time. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher my entire professional life. So I've been writing these tiny poems called pedagogical sketches, and this is pedagogical sketch 4. And in the collection I'm working on, it's called The Rabbit in the Archive. And so the idea is there's this rabbit who is always sort of messing up things. And this is a rabbit who messes up a classroom. In the open-air classroom, the rabbits dart between rows. The students start to scream. Each scything earns a cry. Ink spills on the grass. Some years later, when they gather to remember, they will not be able to summon the name of the man who stood just above the rabbits, wet-eyed and no longer young. This is a poem called Zombie Club. It was recently read. It was really fun. It was read on a radio station, WUSC in Columbia, South Carolina, which was very fun. And these two very young people, they were about 18 or 19 years old, did this excellent close reading of it on the indie rock radio show at 5 a.m. last week. It was very fun. People my age and older will know that a zombie is a rum drink. The young people did not know that and didn't get the double entendre. I don't blame them, but my parents spent much of the late 1970s drinking zombies at the Chinese restaurant before I was born, and this is sort of an ode to them. In an A-frame Chinese restaurant on Route 1, my father glows uranium green and celebrates 1978 with pineapple and rum, apricot brandy and lime. My mother does not drink. She drives the van under the moonlight and billboard glow while her drunk friends and husband roll in the back. When they laugh, she laughs. Even when my father says he will die young from all the radiation he has absorbed at work. I picture him like Homer Simpson tossing green rods over Geiger counters. Tonight, it's glass after glass of cold tropical booze under the comedian stage banter, too sweet chicken and stale broccoli, the slow stitching of the past and future. If I wrote a poem on how to survive, this would be it. One more glass of just enough of what could kill you, but doesn't. The radioactive potential of the hope of more years to pass. A mutation, some stubborn life. And finally, when my great aunt was very close to the end, she started talking to her sister, who was my grandmother, and they were very different women. My grandmother was a very stereotypical 50s housewife, and my great aunt was a very unconventional woman. And so to picture that last conversation is very fascinating to me. So finally, this poem is called Sisters. My grandmother waited by the phone in 1957 for my grandfather to call. Drop the spaghetti now. I imagine her eyes over the tortured bubbles in the water, dreaming of actions that would keep that phone from ringing. In 1990, there are no kind words between them. In 2004, she is dead. But here she is at her sister's deathbed, 19 years an expert in how to dissolve. My aunt talks to her. I have never been told what she said. I imagine only, then I, and then you, and a subtle comfort, a still moment, alone again at the stove, just like that, but now all the time. Thank you.
Wonderful, Tim. Wonderful. I love the poem about cleaning out the house. Just amazing. It's so true. If for anyone who's ever had to do that duty, it's pretty incredible task. Also the line, look at all this garbage. How could you not be beautiful among it? The story of my life, right? Anyway, thank you, Tim, very much. Next, we have Joan Seliger Sidney, who is a writer in residence at UConn Center for Judaic Studies and Contemporary Jewish Life. Her publications include 3 collections of poetry, and most recently, the translated work of, I'm going to hopefully not butcher it, Mircea Gansel, who is a French poet. So welcome, Joan.
Thanks so much. First, I want to show the beautiful cover to our bilingual edition published by World Poetry Books. And I was very excited. About 2 weeks ago, the publication brought Mircea Gansel from France, and we went on a book tour, reading first at Brown University, and then we had our book launch at UConn, and then we went into New York. Mircea had her dream come true. We dashed through the Frick Museum, and she said she's always wanted to see Vermeer paintings, as many as she could. And she stood in front of beautiful painting, and the exciting minute she took out her phone to snap, and the guard said, absolutely not, it's forbidden. And then he looked at her and he said, but do it very quickly before anyone sees you. And then we went to Philadelphia and read at the University of Pennsylvania. So it's my great honor to read translation of some of Mireille's poems I'll read tonight. And she has a sequence of migration poems, and they are forthcoming in Liz McLaughlin's anthology called Migrations and Home. And I'll just read, the series of poems. A house to come back to against all odds, to leave from a small fishing port or from some pier at the bottom of a cove at the tides and currents, to dock on makeshift pontoons, water from the only well on the islands, light from flashlights or candles all around. Murmurs and whispers, voices and calls, the slapping of beaks and the rubbing of wings of these great travelers come from every continent. On the rocks and cliffs, beaten by the winds, day and night, without a sound, with silent steps, you become a bird among the birds, and they become inhabitants of the earth. The time, just the time to give life and to prepare their young for the coming migration. Cliffs of pink sandstone, blackened by seaweed, sharpened by the winds, in blades erect along the precipices, white bursts among the honey fragrance of maritime silenes, and among the rocks and broken stones, scarlet pimpernels and little stars, mouse ears, yellow, heart of matricea, and lively flames of buttercups. They are back on their naked island, only wings for shadow. And suddenly, in this stone solitude, bouquets of tiny forget-me-nots, and on the back of a clod of earth, wild thoughts of night, blue with a border of light. There are small blades of bluebells, of wood traces of forests disappeared. An outcrop of peat and rocks, a whole underground world, galleries and burrows of seabirds, arid land where they return from continents and oceans to find their little homes buried deep under the wind-blown grass, an entire world of survival that you ignore when you step on it, leaving the narrow marked path, fragile earth, their native land where they give life. Puffins, one, returned from so far away, their time becomes yours. They are walking a stone's throw from you. So strange, so familiar. They come out of their burrow with a little bit of dirt around their beak. They wander around, watch, scrutinize, suddenly run to gather momentum, to dive toward the sea, to the very bottom, to disappear deep in the water, to resurface with a beak full of fish, to dash off underground toward the little one at the very bottom. 2, sudden wind of panic, The great wings of the gulls cast their shadow on the burrows. The puffins sink into the earth, stand guard, run in tight rows toward the promontory, fly away without a cry. 3. Standing at the edge of the cliff, in the face of raging winds, they are their own little home. 4. On the grassy slope, they are there, standing at the entrance of their burrows, like so many small transhuman huts on an alpine pasture in this evening light. Storm petrel, nested at the bottom of cavities in cliffs above the lighthouse. You will not see them all day long. It is at night that they go out to fish, melting in the dark to avoid seagull attacks. In the long twilight of this summer solstice, under a crystal blue night sky, the moon was throwing a bridge of gold on the sea. Suddenly, a flight of thin black wings darted, twirled, backlift, swift as though on alert, and then set off again, just as suddenly in the steep rocks. This is all I will have seen of this bird, which is said to be the smallest of the migrators returned from Mauritania and South Africa. And it is also said that when the sailors saw them land on the boat, it was a sign of bad weather menacing. English puffins. In the early morning along the cliffs, among the flowers and broken stones, the fleshless bodies of English puffins also come out at night to go fishing. One of the two guards the burrow. That night, you recorded the 40-minute dialogue between the male and female couple of English puffins at the bottom of their burrow. 2, you dream of one day being able to recognize among 1,000 each one of these migratory birds when it will return next season, among 1,000, to recognize its sounds, its noises, its movements, its cries, its language, and instead of a band, know by its voice the storm petrel. In the small port of sea houses, upon raising anchor this morning, the fishermen said firmly, "They are gone. Yesterday, there were only 2 Arctic terns left." At the edge of the rainy sky, there are bright cumulus clouds with translucent blue crater lakes. The boat runs alongside the cliffs, and there's silence already of absence, and in a farewell dance all around the lantern, where in foggy weather we lit alarm fires. 2 pair of wings, so white, so thin, barely the weight of a large letter. They twirl before flight further north, where they fortify themselves until Antarctica, where they will arrive in November. And on the desert island, the bird burrows are empty. The expanses of pale green hemlock and pearl gray thistles tremble in the wind. And among the already black and the silvery reflections of the last maritime silines, a few little ones practice on the waves. The leaden sky is so low that the water has colors of night. But suddenly a sunny spell traces a silver bridge, and then on the damp peat there is the scent of tall mint recently pulled up, for when the Arctic terns will come back to make their nests. Thanks so much.
Beautiful, beautiful poems. I can see why you were attracted to her work. Have you been familiar with her work for a long time, Joan?
Well, the last 4 years I started reading. A mutual friend put us in touch, and I was just so impressed by her beauty.
Yeah, so meditative and just beautiful. Yeah, and with simple language too. And I'm sure that's a great credit to you that you can convey that in your translation. So thank you. Beautiful, beautiful work.
Thanks.
Oh boy. All right. So next we have a true champion of poetry here in Connecticut, Jim Finnegan. Jim's poems are widely published in journals and anthologies. For a decade, he served as president of the Friends and Enemies of Wallace Stevens. He posts aphoristic Ars Poetica at his website, which you'll see if you look in the, let me post it in the chat, bring it out. So there's lots more information about Jim in the chat. Jim, welcome. I have to say, we all owe so much to your daily emails alerting us to all the great things that are happening in the poetry community here in the States. So.
Thank you, Barb, and thanks for asking me to read as part of this series, which is a great series. The first poem I'll read was solicited by a minister who is the head minister at the Congregational Church in New Haven today. He asked me to send it to him, so it came to mind, and I'll read it. It's called A Loon Diving. A rim of ragged hills around this lake. Pardon me a second. Starting over. A rim of ragged hills around this lake in Maine, twilight seeping down through the trees, silence and the water still. Then out of nothingness of mist, a loon appears, dark and regal, it glides over the surface. The wind hesitates and the loon dives deep out of sight, the whole world holding its breath. In these next few moments, nothing bad can happen. No child will cry out in pain. The knife won't slip from the hands of a mother sitting at a picnic table cutting apples and cheese. Not a single leaf will fall. Even the traffic up on Route 1 idles at the intersection in a long delay between red and green. Behind the convenience store, a girl wearing jeans ripped out at the knees closes her eyes and leans into the expectancy of a first kiss. Church bells caught in the throat of the steeple, a good distance away from where it went under. The loon breaks up through the water, and the kiss and the knife and the child tripping over roots behind the cottage, a tolling of bells over the town, cars and trucks rolling again, all things that breathe and hum, that break off and die. Everything in the world as it was, all of it, the evil and the light, all that is both wrong and right, the shining dark and the pitch bright. So a lot of poems I'm going to read tonight are a little bit older, but this one is called, it's kind of an ecological poem, The Detritus Resurrection. Let the finger bones be made of cigarette butts. Let the mouth hole be a dark as a played out mine. Indian corn teeth. Let the left eye be gum well chewed, and in the right socket insert a ball bearing. The torso of our apocalyptic Apollo shall be an overstuffed plastic bag, torn in places, with chicken bones sticking out. Legs, a limping hockey stick, and a broom for a crutch. Any deadfall will do for arms, because he can't hold anything. He can't hold anything, because he's a winding cloth of caution tape. If he must have hair, lay a flattened squirrel over his ruined dome, over the ruined dome of his cranium. He rises up from dumpsters, appearing in vacant lots, along shoulders of the highway. Desecrated scarecrow, avatar of disregard. He lives among us, relative and yet kin to none. He knows our ways and means. We made him in our image, and from our trash he exists. So it is, he becomes us. There's a viral poem going around called something like "There's always more money for war," or "There's always money for war," and it made me think of this poem, which is more of it's about an individual. It's called Gatling. Gatling, that is as in the gun, the first real machine gun. It's said he regretted that he was known more for that hand-cranked instrument of mass death than for the seed drill. Isn't it always seeds versus bullets on this earth? Robert Jordan Gatling, a man who because of an outbreak of smallpox, became a doctor, a man who patented many things, improved many things, like bicycles and toilets, who in his lifetime made and lost a few fortunes. In his latter years, formed a company to manufacture steam plows. Those machines, too, would have come in handy at Chickamauga, at Shiloh, or Gettysburg. All those fallen bodies arrayed in rows, the sun on them, needing to be plowed under. And this one sort of is of the season. It's called "Where the North Star is the Porch Light of the World." Those little finches you have no name for, that flare, slip among the briars and tangles of bittersweet. Those leaves, ochre, ruddy umber, that have left the trees that churn over the earth, ash, maple, oak, bereft before the wind. Smoke from the chimneys copying out the collected works of Anonymous. If there was a home that was not an empty mouth, if there was a train whistle that was not a lash driving you on, you'd turn around and go back. You decide in an instant, as a bird alighting on a high twig must know whether the tree holding its slight weight is long dead or only November dormant. This one actually takes place in Albuquerque, but it could be anywhere. It's called St. Francis again. St. Francis, I saw you standing there amid garden store yard ornaments, your face reflecting in the gazing globe, the giant green frog and the whirligig geese at your feet. Like that first Chinese emperor's terracotta warriors, the gnomes arrayed in ranks behind you. St. Francis, you've always been my favorite, and your current circumstance doesn't alter my admiration. If your outstretched arms are frozen forever, waiting for a sparrow to alight, then to shit in your palm. If your eyes are blank and unfocused, staring at the constant traffic along this road, still I love that you stand there, posed and poised for eternity, ready to fall to your knees, to bring your hands together, not to pray, but cupped like a beggar's bowl to catch the infrequent rain. And I'll do just two more. I tried to read this poem at the a gathering of West Hartford Poet Laureates. Actually, West Hartford was early on the Poet Laureate scene. We have seven of us. But my contacts were bad that night and I didn't make it through. So I'll try it again. It's called Nowhere Wind. All those loose threads you used to break off, you used to bite or break off your clothing, let them hang there. You may need these frail filaments to tie yourself down one day when the nowhere wind blows from the other side of the horizon, out of deserts, across dead seas, through prison yards and empty playgrounds, blows from nothing to tatter souls, yellow the curtains, angels like sailcloth shredded in an unholy gale, hollow and forgetful, the sound of skull mouths after tongues turn to clay and then dust, goes rifling through drawers of old photographs, curling the edges, stealing the remembered light from their eyes, untrustworthy, shifting, vagrant, swirled with litter, erases the names and dates from headstones, muttering, spitting rain, carries along the grid of seconds that blind in time those statues in the square. A pale ache or dark echo, who knows what, but you will know when it comes, like a like trains in the distance late at night, like a well hole gone dry. And if it does, don't run. For when you try to flee, it's fly away, bird feather, bus ticket, kiss goodbye. Grab any doorknob and call it home. Tie a shoelace to a table leg. Fill your pockets with pennies and beach stones. Latch onto anything. Be the oak 10 years dead that won't fall. Hold tight till the veins in your hands take root. Write it out. Close your eyes and don't listen. And though full of loss, try not to breathe in. Branch don't break. Let it pass through you, loveless and lonely. I think I'll just end on that one.
That's a killer to end on, Jim. Whoa, I loved it. Wonderful. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Is that published anywhere that we could find it?
It was published in a journal about 10 years ago. I've been a delinquent about publishing a book, but I'm going to get on it.
Oh boy, just gorgeous. I really like the first one too. Thank you. That was luminous. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to close up the night with another wonderful poet. Catherine DeNunzio is the author of Enough Like Bone to Build On. A retired public school educator, her poems have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, and she lives in Ledyard with her husband, who's in the audience here. I saw him before, with poet Louis Gabordi. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. My first poem is A Discernible Decline in Health. Now that it has begun, you want before, or at least a chance, one chance to feel what you had. Would it, though, change anything that matters? Say it is granted. Maybe this happens. Everything you had before is revelation. Then your decline becomes discernible again, and okay, you go on that way and on that way and on that way, losing more thises and that's, same as before. Maybe, though, in that moment, before perception too begins to skew, you perceive the revelation as schematic, and quickly, before it dissolves, you design a template. Every morning, you enter all that you still have and let all that having accompany you like a brilliant soundtrack that keeps you in the here and now, knowing that your body will not lose or ache or fade or fail quite this amenably again. I came across at some point the concept of prayers for certain maladies or issues. And this sonnet, which is called Prayer for Perseveration, asks for certain things to sort of ward off perseveration, since perseverating is one of my greatest talents. Daily laden skies, dense with sleet and snow, ice-slick cobbled streets, rank with workhorse urine, fowl hanging in a butcher's window, trips to barter baskets, pecks of biffins, infant slung in wool, snug against my chest, fire low back home, hungry mouths to feed, belly growing big, too much to do to rest, rising on a shelf, sourdough to knead. Curds to wash again, pies to fill and bake, wood to haul inside, cows to milk by dark, fire to rekindle, evening meal to make, young to put to bed, willow to debark. Give me a life of sweat and labor, bloody, instinct, necessity, a body, a body. This next one is Unyielding Love. Poetry, do not give me words like these, bittersweet, brambles, barren, thorns, vines, terrain, or these, light, stars, moon, burgeoning, birth, deliverance, soothe, navigate, praise. Nothing that signals that since you understand, you have a suggestion, an answer even. All I need to do is follow, is believe, is open my eyes, is be astounded by your life, my life, is accept that your wisdom can replenish the, not this word either, vessel that I am. Also not gratitude, as in gratitude will anchor you. I have seen, as if in a mirror on a curve, that what is coming is not stoppable, may in fact be a beginning. Today, I finished with soups and teas, with clean sheets and towels and antiseptic wipes, with nighttime waking and dosage schedules, with ice packs and heating pads, with reverent awe. What I have witnessed is what anchors me. Her last breaths, his open eyes not reflecting. And what filled me with the peace I think you mean when you say gratitude was caring for them, was believing that unyielding love was power. It is a cloud with nothing left below to water or shield. A couple of things before I read my next poem. The next poem is called A Different Kind of Logic. One is that when I was growing up, my mom had a copy of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet in her bookcase, or in the bookcase. And she, I remember when I was a teenager, she talked to me about some of his work and admired it. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that when my folks were in their 90s, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and that plays a role in this. And the poem, A Different Kind of Logic, opens with this Gibran epigraph. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Again, my father says he wants to go home. Again, my mother tells him that they sold their home years ago. This is home now. Again and again, he asks her when they will go to bed, where they will sleep, what is next. Excuse me. Last night, he referred to my brothers and me as adopted, though we were not. And after 70 years together, he has begun to forget that he is married to my mother. She hands my father the phone in hopes my voice will soothe his spirits as it always has. He listens quietly as I tell him about my day. But when I tell him that his great-grandson spent all morning climbing, singing, and digging for dinosaur bones, my father cries out joyfully and declares, "Do you know why he does these things? Because he has an eternal spirit of happiness." I recount the exchange to my exhausted mother. A moment passes. Haltingly, she speaks. He could always see, he could always recognize the spirit within a person. And he could see how that connected to something beyond what we can see. I take the chance she has offered. I wonder, Mom, if he means something other than the old house when he speaks of going home. And last night, when he called the boys and me adopted, maybe he meant it in the way Gibran suggests. In the stillness, before her duty love takes over, my mother is unburdened by a different kind of logic. This next poem is a short one called The Sovereign. Is this blossom of Queen Anne's lace past her prime? Around her, like delicate parasols, others at their most enticing bob evasively at passers-by. But days ago, she sent her umbels curling forward into a seed head in which she prepared her progeny. Undulating and coiling, they form a cavern fit for echoing. I was young, I too enticed, but she is done inviting. Now her posture says, admire me or don't. The next poem I want to just mention, it's called Irises, and it begins with an epigraph from Joseph Albers, which says, in dealing with color relativity or color illusion, it is practical to distinguish factual facts from actual facts. And I reference factual facts and actual facts, the concepts in the poem. Albers was an artist and color theorist. Irises. This close-up photograph of a dog's eye sends me to the old supplies, paper, paste, pen, ink, knife. I will cut her iris of yellow-orange, stay factually factual in my choice of hues. I mean to discover, not express. For the swirling fur atop her orbit, I will tear paper crescents of the blackest hue, set them aside to stack around the iris later. For her pupil, a patch of black less saturated, like water, shaded by woods. Then, see it seep across the iris edge, I will pull thin rivulets of ink, let them bleed into the orange. For the hazy reflection as she gazes, an arc of silver foil from a chocolate bar. I want you to know the actual fact of your dog's eye, or of your lover's, so that however briefly, you feel what you see. As for me, I will savor the dark chocolate from the foil. But before I do, before I cut and tear and paste and draw, I will set a clutch of just cut irises into a vase, the air surrounding them reacting to their presence to the air. Nothing is itself alone. My next poem is Holding On to Him, and it's a love poem for my husband. He is shaving in the mirror by the open window when the sun catches a strand of hair upon his chest, glinting silver among the rest. She murmurs, he turns, she finds the strand, follows it, grazing his skin with her fingertip. She asks if there are more she has not noticed, finds several woven through the rush of hair across his groin. Within her, something tightens, throat to navel. The light above the mirror hums. From the shaded cliffs, their sons' voices drift through the window screen. But she is thinking of the day when she will see him slowly scuff his way into the den in moccasins, reach for the crossword on the table, bend, pat the dog, gently tug one velvety sable ear, then the other. At the window, check the outside temperature, turn, head for their bedroom, reappear, dressed the same as yesterday, to resume the chore he'd set aside last evening. Later, she watches as he walks down the driveway for the mail. He pauses, thinking of the orchard, she can tell. She gazes until she can see him clearly again, shoulders square, hair not yet white, watches for signs, tosses in their bed all night. My last poem is called The Task. There are days when what I have to do, even if it's not something big, just things seem too big and my ability seems too small. And this poem came from an experience one day where something in the natural world gave me an answer. The task. Carrying in her beak a twig 3 times her width, a Carolina wren lands on the narrow perch of the birdhouse she has claimed in the dogwood tree. Again and again, she seems to be trying to push the twig through the birdhouse entrance. How can it not have snapped, I wonder, just before I realize she's acting on a plan. Bracing the twig in her beak against the house, she slides it left, 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 until, with a sudden sweep of russet head above tucked wings, she snugs the twig lengthwise against her body and disappears into the house. Some days, the task too huge, the opening too small, I feel myself as driven as any nesting wren. I make the twigs fit however I can, because these are my wings, my beak. With these and my resolve, I build the life I can. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Another beautiful reading. Thank you, Catherine. I was so moved by the poem about your father's Alzheimer's.
Thank-
And just the way you linked it to Gibran and what he said about his great grandson, was just a magical, perfect poem. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I welcome you to please come back in January. Let me find my list of our wonderful readers. We're going to have Ralph Nazareth, Julia Paul, Julia Myler Simpson. I'm sorry, Julia. I spell it wrong. I pronounce it wrong. It's terrible. I'm sorry. Victoria Nordland and Rob Piazza. So please come back January 3rd. It's going to be right off the tail of the new year. So you're going to be looking for something wonderful and peaceful to do. So thank you, Lucy. I don't know if you're still here.
I'm right here. Thank you
Oh.
so much, Barb. That was actually wonderful. I love listening to everyone's poems.
This was a wonderful night. So, well, happy holidays, be safe, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks,
Good night.
Barb.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
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 you
you,
all.
everyone.